Now, for a few weeks last April, he was the most popular man in Britain. Proof, perhaps, that a year is a very long time in politics.
Yes, tonight, Nick Clegg, Deputy Prime Minister and Lib Dem leader, is on the election trail in our region. So, live to Phil Hornby, who's in Newhaven in Sussex. Phil.
Yes, evening, Fred. He arrived here literally 2 minutes ago to meet local business people. But one of your supporters yesterday said you're so unpopular at the moment, you're having a toxic effect on the Lib Dem election campaign. So should you perhaps have stayed away?
No, I'm delighted to be here. I'm in a building which was granted to the local area by the Liberal Democrat Council and has been very, very successful in getting new businesses going, and that's exactly what we need to be doing. I was in another part of the country just yesterday unveiling new investment that we're making to create new jobs, to provide optimism and hope, particularly to those young people who need jobs to go to.
But your party's on the floor in the opinion polls. How?
No, I think it's not true. It's not true. Not on the floor.
Well, it is.
Well, I actually get out on the doorstep and talk to people, and what I think people are looking for is answers from this government and from the Liberal Democrats, and for me, to the many anxieties people have about what's going on in our economy. And of course, what we're doing is difficult, controversial things today, so that we have a brighter, better future tomorrow. But you know, we're spending as a country we're borrowing £400 million every single day of every single week. That's enough money to build a primary school every 20 minutes. And I think it's right that we wipe the slate clean so that our children and our grandchildren don't have to pay off our debts.
OK, most electoral contests in our part of the world are fights between the Liberals and the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives. People might be slightly puzzled about who they should vote for with this coalition going on.
Well, look, we are two parties in coalition, but it doesn't mean we are sort of the same thing. We're not. We are separate, distinct parties. Look, I've got a little badge here for a referendum contest.
Have you come here to whip up referendum fever? Because I haven't felt any yet.
We have a referendum in a month's time, and the two coalition parties have diametrically opposed views. I actually think most people, dare I say it, outside the media and politics, think it's perfectly normal that from time to time people who disagree with each other nonetheless try to work together for the common good. And we are two parties that have come together because no one won the election outright last year to clean up the mess left by another party, the Labour Party. And it's a difficult job. It's not an overnight job, but there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm absolutely convinced that once we've done the repair job to the economy, there will be better days in the future.
Nick Clegg, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and back to you.
Phil, lively stuff. Thank you very much indeed.
So, after a year in coalition government with the Conservatives at Westminster, what is the Liberal Democrats' message? Well, they've pledged to keep taxes low, they've frozen council tax in the authorities that they run, and they want to invest in green jobs such as offshore wind farms. And they're calling for a new voting system, encouraging people to say yes in the alternative vote referendum on May the 5th. Well, the Deputy Prime Minister and party leader Nick Clegg is campaigning in Newhaven this evening. He joins us from there live now. Mr. Clegg, thank you very much for being with us. Well, local elections hugely important for your party. A lot of people are very angry over tuition fees, which of course your party pledged to oppose. Are you worried that you could lose control over the only two councils that you have authority in the South East as a result?
No, I'm very optimistic, not least if you consider what's actually happening because of the decisions we're taking in government. I mean, just over the last week, every pensioner in this area, in the whole country, is now going to be better off because of decisions that we've taken in government. Your state pension is going to go up by 2.5%, or inflation or earnings, whichever is higher. That's restoring the earnings link for the first time since it was broken by Margaret Thatcher back in the 1980s. 23 million basic rate taxpayers across the whole country are £200 in cash terms better off.
But on tuition fees, Kent and Sussex and Surrey universities have all decided that they're going to charge the maximum of £9,000. Was it naive to think that any university wouldn't try and do that?
Well, let's remember that this is the beginning of a process. The universities are saying what they want to charge, but they can't just charge whatever they like, certainly not without proving how they're going to admit more youngsters from disadvantaged backgrounds who aren't being given a fair crack at the whip. I think it's worth stressing, of course, that whilst what the universities are allowed to charge is going up, what graduates will repay only when they can afford to after they've left university will in many respects, in most respects, go down. So in the future, when when people see how the system will work, they will discover that graduates will pay out, all graduates will pay out less from their bank accounts on a monthly basis than graduates do today. And I sometimes think that people need to kind of look beyond the headlines to realise that actually what we're putting in place is a fairer system than the one that we inherited from Labour.
Well, let's move on to health then. Eastbourne and Hastings hospitals have been a major story for quite some time here. Concerns over the future of the maternity units, and people thought that battle had been won. It's back on the agenda again. What's your personal preference? Would you rather see specialised sites in one place or services closer to the local people that use them?
I think what's gone wrong in the NHS, and it's one of the things that we're hoping to introduce over the next few years, a change, is to give local people and local communities more of a say. For far, far too long, the NHS was run as a sort of plaything by politicians and officials in Whitehall. And one of the changes we want to see introduced is, for instance, to give local authorities more of a say about what happens in the healthcare system in their area or in social care. And so I really, I think we need to try and move on from this use of the NHS by politicians, as I say, as a sort of to score political points from London. We've had too much bureaucracy, we need less bureaucracy, and we need to put GPs more in charge because, of course, they know you and I best. When we go into their surgery, they not only know what is wrong with our health, but also what needs to happen to make us feel better.
Well, we talked about, you mentioned political point scoring there. Andrew Lansley obviously has had a lot of grief today from the Royal College of Nursing. Your party is in coalition with the Conservatives there. It makes it very difficult for people to necessarily separate the two parties when you're both in the government together.
Well, we've been very clear as far as the NHS is concerned, and I can be very clear. Any government of which I'm a part, of which the Liberal Democrats are a part, will not undermine the fundamental beauty of the NHS, which is it's there for everybody, free at the point of use, only based on need, not whether you can pay for it. And what we want to do is try and have a little less bureaucracy, less paperwork in the NHS, and more of a say, more responsibility for the people who know patients best, the family doctor. And that's what we're trying to introduce, and that's very much in line with the kind of approach to cherishing and protecting and improving the NHS, which Liberal Democrats have campaigned on
Mr. Clegg,
ever since the NHS was founded.
We'll have to leave it there. We could go on at length, but thank you very much for being with us.